Stop. Everyone, stop. At least that's what a federal judge just told Donald Trump about his ballroom. And I want to tell you a lot more about Trump's ballroom, which is a sentence I never, ever want to say out loud again. But here we are. Look, we were all shocked when Donald Trump demolished the East Wing of the White House in October to make room for a 90,000 square foot ballroom. 90,000 square feet. Just for reference, the entire White House executive residence is about 55,000 square feet. He's building a room that is bigger than the building it's attached to. He says it's going to seat 1,000 guests and it'll be the greatest ballroom anywhere in the world. He said this multiple times, including when he was giving out the Medal of Honor. Apparently, this is a real priority for a man who's in the middle of an active war with Iran. And he says that he's funding this White House addition entirely with private donations. $400 million raised, including from Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Meta, Palantir, Booz Allen Hamilton, Caterpillar, T-Mobile, Comcast, and Lockheed Martin, to name a few. Trump stacked the Commission of Fine Arts and the National Capital Planning Commission with loyalists so that they could rubber stamp this project. They did have to have public comments open, and they received over 9,000 comments. 99% of them were negative, and that's according to the commission's own staff. The commission, they approved it anyway. But I want to think a little bit more about the donor list, because Public Citizen did an analysis of 24 of the corporate donors for this ballroom, and what they have found is what Democrats and what we have been calling all along: bribery in plain sight. At least 2/3 of these donors, 16 out of the 24, have active government contracts. Altogether, these corporate donors received nearly $43 billion in federal contracts in the last year alone. And in the last 5 years, $279 billion worth of government contracts. Lockheed Martin, $10 million to the ballroom, received $191 billion in federal contracts over the last 5 years. Booz Allen Hamilton, they donated. They get 98% of their annual revenue from government contracts. Palantir, they donated. They received over $800 million in federal contracts in 2025 alone, more than any prior year they donated. Google's parent company, Alphabet, the ones that own this platform, YouTube, that you're probably watching on, sorry, Google, they paid $22 million to the ballroom, not as an act of goodwill, but as a part of a defamation settlement with Trump after YouTube banned him following January 6th. They settled it by giving money to this building project. And 14 out of those 24 corporate donors, they've had federal enforcement actions against them suspended by this administration. 14 made their enforcement actions against them go away. So if you're keeping score here, you donate to the ballroom, you get away scot-free. It looks like these donors are getting a very solid return on their investment. So we've got this building funded by companies that are receiving the most federal contracts in history, which the president is constructing without congressional approval, staffed by commissions that he packed with his own loyalists, approved despite 99% public opposition. And we call it bribery in plain sight. To me, I actually think it's the most expensive toll booth in American history. Why? Because if you want access to the president, you want things dropped, you want Pentagon contracts, $400 million, please see the donation instructions on the website. But it gets worse. It gets genuinely weird. And I want to give a hat tip here to a site called the Dre Dossier. Because back in December, months before Trump himself has confirmed what's going on beneath this ballroom, the Dre Dossier published an investigation that noticed something that no one else had. The specs for this ballroom are almost identical to Oracle's underground military data centers overseas. 9 stories into bedrock, designed to survive missile strikes, built to house AI systems that make life and death decisions. 90,000 square feet, around $300 to $400 million cost. Sounds a lot like what Trump announced at the White House. The Dre dossier, they also looked at the donor list. And you would think, when you're building a luxury ballroom, that you'd have luxury brands on the building list, on the donor list. If you're building the greatest ballroom in the world for state dinners and diplomatic functions, you'd expect Baccarat Crystal, Versace, Hermes, Steinway pianos, the brands that would absolutely destroy their competitors to be associated with the White House state dinners. Yet none of them are donors. But what is there? Amazon, Microsoft, Google, the three biggest cloud computing and data center companies on earth. Palantir and Booz Allen, classified network builders for intelligence agencies. Caterpillar, industrial generators with over 100 megawatts of backup power. Union Pacific, they operate 14,000 miles of classified fiber optic cables serving as the DoD's secure telecommunications backbone. NextEra Energy, the power infrastructure. None of these are ballroom suppliers. They are the supply chain for data centers. And the Dre dossier then found the Pepco filings. These are important. In August and September of 2025, just weeks after Trump announced the ballroom in July, the DC electric utility Pepco filed an emergency request to increase power capacity near the East Wing by 500%. 500. If you haven't been to DC lately, downtown, those office buildings, a lot of them are sitting half empty since COVID. And with all the DOGE cuts, even more of them are empty. Power demand should be flat or declining. But right after Trump announces this ballroom, there's an emergency request for 5 times the power to a half-empty area of downtown Washington. A dance floor, unless it's the one that I'm cutting the rug on, does not require 500% power increases. An AI system running 24 hours a day inside of a classified underground military complex? They do. Now, I'm not going to tell you definitively what's being built under the White House. But I am telling you that Trump himself just confirmed that there is a massive complex being built down there. And I am telling you that the donor list reads like a data center supply chain, all with conflicts of interest, rather than a ballroom contractor list. That the specs match classified military AI facilities across the globe, and that the power grid around the East Wing is being upgraded by 500% for a building that's just supposed to host dinner parties. You can draw your own conclusions, or just wait for the next stupid lawsuit to accidentally reveal more classified national security information, because that's what happened on Sunday. While holding renderings of the plans up for reporters on Air Force One, again, while we're at war with Iran, Trump revealed the underground complex. Underground facility, bulletproof glass, drone-proof roof, a national security installation. And the reason it became public? A stupid lawsuit. His words. He was annoyed that the lawsuit forced him to disclose that there's a classified military installation under his ballroom. He said this on Air Force One to reporters with drawings in hand. It's crazy. At a cabinet meeting, he said that it was supposed to be secret, but it became unsecret because of people that are really unpatriotic saying things. The unpatriotic thing was filing a lawsuit over this ballroom. The secret thing was the military complex, and yet Trump says them out loud to the press. And look, if the White House needed security upgrades, if our military needed security upgrades that needed military and government contractors, sure, say that. Say that there's a top secret thing going on somewhere. But you don't get to build a giant eyesore in the middle of our nation's capital. Thankfully, as you've seen, a federal judge, Richard Leon, he halted construction, writing that the President of the United States is the steward of the White House for future generations of first families. He is not, however, the owner, using multiple exclamation points in a federal court ruling. It's pretty rare. The judge found that no law gives this president authority to demolish an entire building on White House grounds and replace it using private donations without congressional approval. So construction's got to stop. Trump responded reasonably, went on Truth Social, completely measured, speaking like a president. He said that the National Trust for Historic Preservation sues me for a ballroom that is under budget, ahead of schedule, and being built at no cost to the taxpayer, and will be the finest building of its kind anywhere in the world. He goes on to trash the Fed chair, Gavin Newsom, talk about the Kennedy Center. He's all over the place. And then he winds up saying, so the White House Ballroom and the Trump Kennedy Center, which are under budget, ahead of schedule, and will be among the most magnificent buildings of their kind anywhere in the world, get sued by a group that was cut off by government years ago. But all of the many disasters in our country are left alone to die. Doesn't make much sense, does it? And he signs it, President Donald J. Trump. No, President Trump, it does not make much sense. We have a war with Iran. We have a Department of Homeland Security that just survived a 42-day shutdown. We have healthcare being cut to pay for your illegal war. The FBI is targeting political opponents, and you are posting on Truth Social about a damn ballroom. Your ballroom. The greatest ballroom in the world, which is also a cover-up for conflicts of interest with government AI tech companies. Of course, what happened right after that, the DOJ, they filed a notice of appeal 90 minutes after the judge ruled. Of course they did. Construction had stopped for now, pending the appeal. But the underground military complex, the top secret one that Trump decided to tell the press about, is apparently still being built. Because the judge's order, it only covers the above ground construction. So we're in this situation where the ballroom, it might be paused, but this possible AI military conflict of interest bunker underneath it is continuing. All funded by companies that are receiving billions in federal contracts, that are getting away scot-free out of investigations and built without congressional approval. All with a 500% electrical upgrade that nobody asked for. And it was all accidentally revealed by a lawsuit that was supposed to embarrass Trump. That all right there describes the current state of the White House. Not just the White House, but the people living in it. Subscribe, comment, share, do all of that because we are going to keep tracking this ballroom so that you do not have to. And again, hat tip to the Dre dossier. Look them up, go give them a follow because they dug this out months ago before any of us could catch up.